Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Voltron Legendary Defender Season 6 review. This one's going to be for the last 3 episodes of Season 6, 5, 6, and 7. So I already did 1 to 4, and yeah, here is 5, 6, and 7. Overall, these 3 episodes were obviously very kind of emotional, impactful, big, and to me, overall lent to a pretty successful season. I think with the 3rd episode being the only, weak point, just because it's such a different episode. It kind of doesn't really fit as much with everything else that's going on, where like all 6 other episodes have something very notable to them, whereas that one doesn't. But I think this, as the second half of the season, worked. I think for some, I can sense based on what I know of the fandom, it probably won't be the best received, just because this is the resolution to 1 or 2 kind of plot threads that have been going for a long time, and it hasn't exactly played out the way you'd maybe expect. So let's just jump in. Let's address the Shiros stuff, because that's pretty much what they do immediately. So the reveal is that the Shiro that we've had since basically Season 3 is just a clone. One of many, but it seems like the only active clone. They didn't explain it that well, and I suppose that was because we didn't get Hagar explaining what the project was, so we don't know the full details, but you know, the bit that specifically relate to this Shiro we did get. So this Shiro is a clone of the original, or again, this is where some of the details are missing. Did they clone Shiro initially when they captured him, before the series even started, type thing, the Kerberos mission type stuff? Did they clone him then, and now they've done all this, or what? Because I think the biggest reveal in all of this is that really weird disappearance of Shiro at the end of Season 2 is now confirmed to be he died. He just died there. His physical form just was gone. It disappeared. It was effectively the death of him in body. His spirit, though, lived on inside the Black Line, which what I think was something I at the very least considered. In one of my videos or one of the podcasts that we did on Voltron, I definitely said that at some point. Whether or not I fully committed to it, I'm not really sure, but it's definitely been one of those things that's out there. So that was interesting to know. Just that, okay, so Shiro is technically still alive. He can't really keep his consciousness kind of active through the Black Line, but he's kind of alive in spirit through the Black Line, which was interesting. But yeah, just finding out that it has been a clone for the last couple of seasons, and in a way it's weird because you do have to treat them as 2 different characters, but at the same time the show, I think, is almost asking you to treat them as the same character, because you know, if you take it as okay, the clone was taken, I suppose this is why it's so difficult, because we don't know when the clones were made. At what point does the original branch off from the clone? In that is this from before we ever had Shiro in the series, in that Project Kerberos, before he's even met the other paladins type thing, or is it more that we're meant to say Season 2 is the branching point, and that this Shiro has the same memories up until Shiro disappeared and they went off from there? That's where it's sort of a bit more difficult, in that the show in a way asks you to sort of discard that Shiro, that it's not particularly important about that consciousness that's been going on. And this is where there's even more confusion that's going to be in play here, of now that the original Shiro is back, he's obviously been there because original Shiro has been active in the Black Line, so he sort of knows, or it would make sense if he sort of knows everything that's been going on the entirety of the show, because he's been in the Black Line and the Black Line's been involved in a lot of things. And it's just the specifics of technically everyone interacted with a different person through all of those times, but there were still character moments with clone Shiro, who now is gone, It's even weirder because they obviously do the Allura thing. One of her new powers is the ability to, basically transfer Shiro's essence, quintessence, who he is, from the Black Line into the clone body, which is still alive. So Shiro is back, basically. It's just, I suppose, we're lacking some of the details on him. So they don't kill off Shiro. He's still around. I'm assuming what they're going to do, though, is they're more or less going to say he can't pilot the Black Line anymore because of like some strain on his body, some like disconnect between his this not being his actual body and stuff like that. I think that it makes sense that they'll put him in the sort of commander role that he was in the last time that Keith piloted the Black Line in his original kind of stint as leader. I think they'll return to that, which makes sense, and that I think is a good position for Shiro to be in. That said, would I be shocked if they kind of had it be more of a rotating seat where like Shiro or Keith can do the Black Line, and they maybe make just a lot of the seats on the team be a little bit more kind of changeable, where like if Lance maybe went off in his own to do something, Keith could pilot red again, and you could have that group of the team. Lance can go back into blue if Allura's doing something. I'm not really sure. I that's where like they've obviously made connections between certain pilots and certain lines, but they're not afraid to be like, the pilots, the lines accept different pilots. It's definitely a thing. So I actually enjoyed it because the incredible action scene of like Keith versus clone Shiro was so well done, of just the visuals of Keith confronting Shiro alone, and then the pods lighting up and activating, and it's just a bunch of Shiros, and just it's this earth-shattering moment of just the reveal to us, the reveal to him, and then over the fight learning that the specifics of what's going on here, that he's a clone. And in the start of the next episode, in the kind of, I suppose, the kind of line zone, the spirit area of the Black Line, discovering that, yeah, the original Shiro died in Season 2. He didn't disappear or be transferred somewhere. He actually did die, and so on. So it's one of those ones where it feels like did the writer sort of like trick us in a way with and they did this by making the end of book 2, season 2, Shiro disappearing be such a vague thing that they led you along the path of like, he disappeared. Shiro is still alive, he's out there somewhere, and he disappeared, and now he's been replaced. They presented enough there where like you were aware that something's up here. It's not exactly the case, but I'm not sure how many people directly like just went for the idea that original Shiro is just like gone. Like the body of original Shiro is just nothing anymore. And so there's a sense of like everyone went with the idea that you're going to see like original Shiro and clone Shiro, and maybe they'll fight or something like that, and we'll see some sort of resolution for him as it is. And they more or less have done that. It's just in a kind of different way than everyone expected. I don't mind it too much. I think it's a perfectly fine way to resolve this arc. But I get, as like people are so invested in this, how like, yeah, I can understand if you're not the most happy with the way this worked out. In that, I almost would have respected the show a lot if they had just said like, he's gone, like he'll speak every so often to the pilot of the Black Line, and maybe the others, while they're with Voltron, can get advice from him when they deeply connect to Voltron and the Black Line. But for the most part, the character itself is kind of gone in terms of being alive. And I could also understand why people would be annoyed at that, or how like they thought that this was going to be the well done, well written end of a character, leaving on a high note, the reveal of everything that's going on with Project Quran, and we'll kind of move on from here. Keith is our leader, and I don't think they can reverse that. I think Keith has to still be the leader of Voltron after how much he's stepped up here, how much he's grown, and that's why I do think Shiro will ultimately just go into like a command position. or because the book the season ends with them going back to, they're planning to go back to Earth. I could see Shiro taking up the role as like Earth Voltron alliance kind of liaison or something like that. In that he's obviously the most heavily linked into the Galaxy Garrison, and previous Paladin, like hugely involved in that. I think that's something they could do if they don't want to always have him just be up in space, but something along those lines. And in that sense, depending on what we set up as being the main plot for the next 4 seasons at least, because we know there's at least 78 episodes of the show. This ended on 52, so that means there's at least 4 seasons if they do the typical like 7, 6, 6, 7 thing for the rest. And they could do more, of course, but we know right now that it's for sure confirmed for 78. So I think I understand how like they're not done with the character yet. There's still use, given that they've now expanded out where the plot can go. And now we're not just like our human characters are lost in space. We're actually heading back to Earth now. That makes sense. And in that sense, I can understand the idea of like maybe if you kill him off now, you're wasting him just for the idea that like there's only 5 seats in Voltron. But I thought that was really well done. Next big point would be Lothor's turn. And I think this is the one I can get behind a little bit more in terms of maybe being a little bit more critical of. I'm never the biggest fan of when you take a complex character who has villainous tendencies and just commit to him going all out villain. It just felt to me that too much like, oh, the monster kind of coming out. And while they did an element of like, should we try to save him, to redeem him? Like, is this him just being tainted by the quintessence like his father? Or is this just him? I like that, and I like that they didn't, like, completely close the book on Lothar. In that, the implication is that he's, like, trapped in the quintessence, just, like, feeding off all the power, and he's just gonna stay there, potentially die. I don't think so. I think he will come back. I think they have to resolve that some more at some point. It'd be weird if they just left it like that. I really do think that. So I think there's more to come with Lothar. But not for a little bit. I get why we're going to have a bit of a distraction now. Deal with Earth and where we're going next. The specifics of the turn, like the scene with him and Onerva, I thought was good because you addressed that, like, okay, with Onerva, they confirmed, like I sort of speculated, it is a case of it's more of Hagar with Onerva's memories, and so her core character is still like Hagar, and then it's just she remembers all of the stuff before, but it's sort of specifically chosen to like, okay, yeah, I used to really kind of care about you as your mother, not as much anymore. That's been lost over time, and so it is a different character. We're still meant to see her as being villainous, with maybe some sympathy for the fact that the way she is now is sort of being like amplified by this kind of darker energy that's kind of infecting her. But yeah, there's a lot of twists and turns that happened here. Like you had them turning on Hagar, and then Oxia and the generals turning on Lothar once he went completely crazy. Which, getting into that, like, you can see that, like, okay, in the end, we were sort of meant to interpret him as always being to some degree a master manipulator. But I think it is still complicated in that I still maintain that we are meant to, like, we are meant to take it as the truth when Lothar says that he wants to use unlimited quintessence to bring peace to the world. It's just the sense of he's lost enough that he just can't see that what he did was wrong. In terms of like how he tries to justify sacrificing those Altaeans to further his knowledge and advancement. That was the moment where it's just like, no, you can't be the good emperor that everyone's going to agree with if it's known that you've done that. And he obviously goes evil because the idea is that from his perspective, like, Alfor didn't do anything and he did what was needed to do to save everyone, but he can't see the fact that he's done something so wrong. And that's why Allura you could tell she still cares, because I like that they committed to that, the hurt from Allura, the betrayal, and that she nearly went in 100% with Lothar, and now sees that she nearly caused the problem, all of these problems, and especially when he uses his kind of Voltron, forming all the ships together, she realizes just the extent of how much she was manipulated, and in that sense, like, that's you're meant to interpret the villainous side of him. It's just, I'm never the biggest fan of presenting your villain as just the kind of screaming lunatic. When Lothar, I think, is at his best when he's just kind of composed, or like intensely kind of composed. So to just go the screaming madman road in the final battle, just, I think, took away from it, and in a way allowed me to just be like, okay, I can just dismiss Lothar as a character now, because he is just crazy. There's nothing interesting about him right now, outside of the fact that he has all this power. What's more interesting is, like, is this happening because of Quintessence, or just because it's who he is, and we're actually just meant to interpret it as that he is, like, evil, or are you meant to have sympathy for him? And I think they'll come back to that. I really do think they will come back to it. I just wasn't the biggest fan of it here, because it felt like they Zarkoned Lothar here, in a way of just, Zarkon had the potential to be super, super interesting, especially after the backstory was revealed. But he was always just, I have something really powerful. I'm in charge of the evil army. I will fight you. And nothing about his, like, intentions or character was interesting. And Lothar's had that, because you've been conflicted about him. He's been one of the more intelligent characters. He's been back and forth. You don't know what side he's on. You know his kind of history, in that, like, especially I think it was last season or the season before, when he revealed that the reason he was banished in the first place was because he was put in charge of a planet, but instead of doing things the normal Galra way, he actually chose to work with the government on that planet, and, actually, I suppose, let the subjects be free and not do the whole slavery thing, but was punished for that. So you sort of felt for him there when he explained that. And then I suppose his actions here, the whole experimenting on the Alteans with the aim of ultimately saving Altea, like, it's hard to justify that, of course. But as I said, while I think I understand maybe complaints about that a little bit more, I still fundamentally enjoyed the arc with Lothar. While we've had him, and I do think we'll return to him again. I just feel they made a mistake with the snap moment, I think, with Lothar. I think you could have had him just, like, talk about how, he wants to eliminate the Galra. He doesn't actually care about the Galra. That was actually probably one of the more interesting things that he said, because it immediately turned Oxia and the generals against him. That, wait, you want to be the emperor, but you fundamentally are saying here that you hate the Galra people. What's that about? And just that he hates his lineage so much, yet is completely tainted by that lineage. That he hates basically the fact that he's part, Galra, and actively wants to kill basically the subjects, and he considers himself Altean. There was some interesting stuff revealed here about, like, talking about, like, our culture to Allura, and the fact that I get the sense that he does care about Allura to a degree, but obviously the power kind of means a lot more. It's just, is it a case of just them not falling at the last hurdle, but, like, taking the wrong hurdle or something like that, where they just, instead of adding more depth and keeping the depth in the final fight, they chose to go down the road of just, no, you're meant to see him as the villain. This isn't meant to be overly complicated. The heroes are the heroes, the villains are the villains. I get they had to do that, but it took a little bit away, given how, I think, impressive Lothar has been over the course of his, couple of seasons on the show now. So yeah, there's that. Other big events, the Castle of Lions is destroyed, because they deal with Lothar somewhat early in the final episode, leaving this kind of sense of, because he's been warping in and out of the quintessence field, it's basically created this like rift between dimensions that's expanding, they're linking together, and it's basically unstoppable. If they don't do something to actively stop this, it's not just gonna like run itself out. It's going to just form this permanent rift and basically tear everything apart in the entire universe, every single universe. So they decide to basically, they have to sacrifice the Castle of Lions and like use the Teledov to basically, they kind of have to use the ship kind of like a bomb Teledov, and use the fact that they form like a wormhole in the middle of all of this to like temporarily overload the wormholes and the Teledov to like combine it all together. It's obviously like jargon from the show. More or less makes sense with the idea that Teledov is crazy energy, here's crazy energy, link the two together and you solve the problem. And they did the destruction of the castle like the death of a character. They treated the memories, the fact that they devoted time to like going to everyone's room, them getting the belongings they want to keep, that they don't want to be destroyed, and moving them all into the lines. It got across that like this has been the Paladins' home. This is all they've known since they've like left Earth at the start of the series. This place means a lot, and especially for Karan, Allura, it's this like one remaining kind of like part of Altea. It's this kind of moving castle that's was made on Altea, and it means so much, and the destruction of this to save the entire universe was a fitting moment with the setup at the end that it is possible to build another castle, because they're going to head back to Earth and get information from Paige, his father. What else? They do have a little bit of a memento thing, and then it's revealed that the castle has actually just been like condensed into one like diamond type thing. Now, I think the implication is that this is going to be like the power source for the next castle, in that it's probably the crystal that they had to power the Teledov, empowered by all the like reality warping stuff, plus the like power functions of the castle, all like melded into one just crazy powerful crystal, and it's going to make the new castle, once they build it, even more powerful than the old one. So I think they haven't said as much about it, but just the fact that they focused on that as like a memento from the last one, the heart of the old castle is going to become the heart of the new one in a way. So that I think that makes sense. And yeah, like I think that's most of the thing. Like obviously this is just my initial reactions. I've only watched the episodes once. I'm recording this immediately after watching episode 5, 6, and 7. I'm not going to remember every single scene. We do still have our other Altain character, Rommel, I think it is, with everyone. Crawley is still there. A lot of the other side of this episode did revolve around just like a lot of scenes of like Paige and Karan, Crawley messing around with bits of the castle that were failing because like Shiro's arm had like implanted this crazy like virus system that like Paige had to stop from destroying the castle. That was, all cool for sure, just to see little scenes. Definitely not the most interesting part of the episode, because it just felt like very just technical, like characters shouting out like lists of things that are wrong with the castle while the action is happening. But it was at least, I think, something going on in the background. But it perhaps took up a little bit too much time for the last couple of episodes. I still very much enjoyed all of these episodes because a lot happened. They committed. They told us what happened with Shiro. I personally still want some more explanation. I would like, from like Hagar's point of view, to get like the origins of Project Charon. Like, when did you decide to do this? Was this with like Shiro when he was initially captured before the series, or a more recent time you came into contact with him? Why Shiro specifically? Is it because he's so like tactically good, such a good fighter, or what? The fact that you'd specifically, of any other being you've ever captured, Shiro's the one that you want to like clone into like make an army of. I'm not sure, but it still leaves a lot out there. Like even by the end of this season, we have that the potential to head back to Earth, Semdak is still out there. Now that Lothar is gone, it leaves the seat of Emperor in the Galra Empire open again. Hagar is still out there, but she's now kind of on her own because the generals are also out on their own. And it feels like, in a way, the general's only choice is going to be to team up with Team Voltron at some point. Hagar, I assume they'll have to shift her into being the main villain while Lothar is kind of missing, quote unquote. But now that he has changed, if Hagar and Lothar meet up again, I get the feeling that they would actually join up now. That Lothar can't exactly just call Hagar the monster now that what he's done has come out and he's kind of accepted it and has kind of been morphed by it all. So there's a little bits and pieces of setup here, and that Lothar, when he comes back, could team up with Hagar, but we don't really know what the support structure is like. Does Hagar still have like control over a certain part of the Empire and stuff like that? That's what I'm not sure about. Similarly, like once we've got everything sorted out, like I assume Kralio will return to Earth with everyone to. I assume we'd probably get a scene at Keith's father's grave or something like that, if they want to do that. But yeah, I think next season probably will be a lot of fun, just with Earth, the characters reuniting with their families after so long, explaining where they went, and all that sort of stuff. That should be very, very cool to see. And like Allura, Karan kind of on Earth as well. That's a fun one. That we've had the Paladins have to react to all the space stuff that they're used to. We can do the shift now of just the Alteans reacting to Earth. And I assume potentially one of the end goals of the series would be to potentially have all the Altea or New Altea, whatever they want to do, and Earth form some sort of a relationship and people be able to live in both. But that's just speculation for the future. But yeah, I'll pretty much wrap it up there. I enjoyed these last 3 episodes. I love that they committed to the resolving the Shiro thing, but there's still more to come, I think, with that. Lothar becoming the villain, the Voltron versus the 3 ships combined together fight was, I think, cool. But I think for me, definitely with this show, it's kind of characters first, and then the fight, the action stuff secondary. I know sometimes this show has been criticized by some fans of like the originals for maybe not being as like similar to the other ones as possible, and that like we don't get a giant mech fight or a giant beast versus Voltron fight every single episode. But I like that it's more character focused, because when a moment happens where you care, you super care, as evidenced by Keith versus Shiro and how they went about resolving that. So I'm very excited to see where they go from here. And again, these seasons like are only kind of half seasons. Like this is only 7 episodes, and I think they did a lot with them. And I'd rate this very similarly to last season, which I also loved. And I think the show is on a pretty good run right now. It's gotten away from some of the weaker stuff that kind of had sort of plagued the show a little bit in like season 2 and 4, I believe. So I don't think they can mess up Earth. So I'm very positive on this. As for further coverage of Voltron, the podcast review which we do won't be this weekend. It'll be next weekend more than likely. Scheduling means we can't work it out to record this weekend, but we'll do everything we can to make it happen next weekend. Other video you can expect from me is I will do some speculation for season 7. I'll do a video on that coming up. I don't know exactly when, but you'll see it on my channel within the next week or 2. But yeah, that's been my thoughts on Voltron Legendary Defender Season 6, my initial thoughts. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the season and what I had to say about it. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.